everyone, it's Amy, and today in my kitchen I'm making almond bars. Now some people think this is a strictly holiday treat, but in my house I make it year-round because it is my favorite thing to bring out of the freezer and serve to family and friends on a weeknight, weekend, party, whatever it is. These go fast, and what I love is that it makes a big jelly roll pan full of them. They're so easy, and you freeze them, and they freeze beautifully, thaw beautifully, and taste amazing. So let's get started, and I'll show you just how easy these almond bars are to make. Okay, so first up, you're going to put 1 cup of unsalted butter that's been softened to room temperature into a mixing bowl, and you're going to add 2 cups of granulated sugar, and we're going to beat this for about 3 to 4 minutes until it's fluffy. You really want that butter and sugar to come together. It's going to start to thud around in the bowl. That's how you know it's ready for the next ingredients. Okay, next up is 2 eggs, and then we're going to put in a teaspoon of almond extract. I love adding almond to my desserts, and we're also going to use real almonds, but the almond extract gives a delicious flavor to the base of this cookie. All right, we're gonna beat that for another minute or so. Wanna get those eggs really blended into the butter and sugar mixture. That looks fantastic. All right, next up is 3½ cups of all-purpose flour, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and we've got ½ a teaspoon of kosher salt going in. Now you're gonna mix this just until it's combined, so don't over mix at this point. To make the almond bars, you're gonna need a jelly roll pan, and some people refer to it as a half sheet pan. So if you look at the size difference, this is my 15 by 10, and this is the jelly roll, which is like around 18 by 13. So you want that bigger pan, which that'll give you some idea of how many bars this is going to make. So you can generously butter this or use a baking spray. It's my preferred way to do it. And then you're gonna take your dough, and you're gonna dump it in there, and then you're just gonna use your hands to press that dough firmly into the bottom of your dish. And as you press it, you're gonna wanna make sure that the dough is very even. So you can use a pastry roller if you're not sure, to make sure that that dough is even, because as it bakes, you're gonna see some of the thicker parts bubble up a little higher and they'll take longer to bake. These are literally one of my favorite cookie bars. They're very nostalgic. You'll try them and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I think my grandma made these when I was a kid. Okay, to add super moisture to these cookie bars, we're going to brush on about 2 tablespoons of milk. And I start by just pouring it on and then using a pastry brush to just make sure that it spreads out a little bit. It's okay if you have little pockets of milk, because we're gonna put some almonds on top, and that's what's gonna help the almonds stick to the cookie dough. Okay, perfect. Now you're gonna take 1 cup of sliced almonds, and you're gonna sprinkle them over the top of these cookie bars. These are gonna go into a 325-degree preheated oven, and they'll bake for about 20 to 25 minutes. You don't wanna overbake these bars, trust me. You want them soft. These are very soft cookie bars. Think like Snickerdoodles soft. Okay. I'm gonna go put these in the oven and I'll be back. All right, you guys, these look amazing. You can see the center kind of bubbled up a little bit higher than the edges. It's fine. The edges are very lightly browned, which is what we want. And now we're gonna let this cool in the pan for about 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna cut them into bars and move them over to a parchment paper lined cookie sheet. And the reason I put the parchment paper over here is because we're gonna put an icing on these cookies, and it just helps clean up so you don't have to clean each and every one of these little squares. So let this cool 5 minutes, cut it, stay tuned. All right, let's get slicing these bars. So I like to do about a 1-inch size bar. That way they're the perfect biteable width. Make sure you're pressing down and not sliding it, because otherwise you're going to drag all those almonds with you. And the reason I cut these while they're warm is because then you get a more fine cut as they firm up. they're gonna crumble a little bit more and we don't want that. So I cut them while they are warm. If you start to get a little buildup on your knife, you can wipe it off with a paper towel or a rag. You can hear the crunch of the almonds. And now I like to make them into bars instead of squares. So I'm gonna make them about 1 inch thick and 2 inch in length. Now we are going to move these over to the parchment paper. And just so you know, they are a very soft cookie, so don't be surprised if your finger can indent them. That is okay, they are fully cooked. And now I'm just gonna use this to kind of separate each one a little bit. Perfect. And I'm gonna make up the icing. So in a bowl, I have 2 cups of powdered sugar, and I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of milk and half a teaspoon of the almond extract that we used earlier. And you're just gonna whisk this together until it's combined. If you need more milk to get it a little thinner, you can use a little bit more milk. So you want your icing thin enough that it'll drizzle onto your cookie bars. And we're just gonna drizzle the icing onto these cookie bars. And I just use the whisk to do this. You don't need to spread it, just drizzle it on. And then you're gonna let the bars sit and cool completely and let that icing cool completely. So we're gonna give them about an hour to do that. Okay, I let these set so that way the icing sets nicely. And you can see how soft they are. The icing is nice and firm. The perfect amount of sweetness. I think you're gonna love these. Enjoy.